Hello, benefit spongers! How you doing? This is me just scratching my nips. Scratchingdamnips.com. It's fine. Sometimes they get itchy. It's not even really my nips, it's just my chest. Oh, exciting. Anyway, what have I been doing? Well, what have I been doing? To be honest, I've been playing so much XCOM. Because as I talked about last week, I've had this issue in the fact that I really want to get back into doing the kind of more dedicated one-off stuff, but at the moment, because of the nature of my week, it's getting so filled up with just trying to keep on track with all the weekly stuff I've created as commitments. Dark Souls 2 Diary should be wrapping up soon because I feel like I'm near the end of the game, but again, I haven't had time to play it through to the end because of the fact that I've been doing other stuff. XCOM Diary is probably going to go on for quite a while because it's quite a long game, and Dark Souls obviously indefinite as well. So my plan was, and is to just get the XCOM stuff done. Get it done. So I've been playing loads of XCOM. I've been recording like multiple episodes a day. I'm not going to tell you how many because I don't want to spoil how long it goes on for, but yeah, I've been recording a lot. And basically I'm kind of thinking, the problem I've got now is it's like, well, I kept playing thinking, well, it might be over soon. And then it wasn't over. And it's like, oh, okay, how long is this going to go for? And I was like, well, if I record like, maybe let's say if I record 2-3 months worth at once, then I kind of think, oh, well, I've not got to do any for ages. But then I'm thinking, well, then no, because then if I get to like the 3-month period and think, oh, I'm running out, and then just start playing XCOM again, then it's going to be like, A, I won't really know what's going on. B, I'll probably have lost my like skill. So there'll be an episode where suddenly I'll just be terrible and I'll lose the game immediately or something. And I just sort of feel like that would be rubbish. So I sort of created a rod for my own back in the fact that I realized that the only way to do it really is to see it out. So the only way to do it is to really just keep spending a lot of time, just day after day, recording like maybe 5 episodes a day. And I should say actually that the future episodes, they do kind of vary in length a bit. Some of them they're about 40 minutes minimum, but often as it gets later in the game, they do become like an hour and a half. Admittedly, I reckon by this stage, a lot of people will have stopped watching it, but to be honest, as long as about 400, 500 people are watching it, that's fine. That's the whole nature of what I'm doing here with the Patreon thing. But obviously I'm aware that not everyone likes XCOM, even though you're mad, it's the best bloody game ever. So I do want to get back to focusing on other stuff. And today, actually, I want to make a video about the whole Tomodachi Life thing and the whole Nintendo's response to that and all sorts of things like that. But again, I need to do it. I need to have the time. I need to have the freedom to do these things because at the moment my days are just slipping away constantly, just with just having created my own sort of admin with weekly series stuff. So it's difficult because people really like weekly series stuff, but I need to find a compromise. I need to find a way of doing it. I kind of get how some YouTubers end up just doing that and nothing else, because it really can be very time consuming making these series things. And I can see now why a lot of popular YouTube channels, that's all they do is let's play this, because it takes so much time to do it. I mean, you know, those guys just work 6-7 days a week, just recording constantly. And even just doing like one of those things and a couple of other bits, just taking up huge chunks of my week. So anyway, I'm not complaining about that, but I just want to get that out of the way. So it means I'm still a bit quiet at the moment because I am recording tons of stuff. I just want to get the whole series in a state where I just go, you know what, even if it's going to run for like 3, 4, 5 months, I want to just have it all recorded, all done. So then I can be like, hey, I don't have to do that. I've got a video going up every week for the next 5 months or whatever, and I don't have to do it. It's done. So all I have to do is just press a button, which means I can start focusing on doing all sorts of awesome stuff that I want to do. But it does mean that because I've worked this out, I maybe will not be too quick to leap into my next big series. Just because I've realized this is the way I need to do it, because of this, I need to kind of be quite careful with it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do any of the stuff I used to love doing. And also because, you know, we've got other stuff coming up. Obviously, Game of Thrones Abridged, I've only got about another 6-7 weeks of that left, maybe. No more than that, about 8 or 9 weeks, maybe 10. But then after that, it will be around the same time, it will be E3. A lot of people asking about E3 Abridged. I'll probably do something, yeah. I'm not sure exactly what. I have had a guy who runs another YouTube channel. It's not a major YouTube channel. Well, it's quite a big YouTube channel, but it's not one you're likely to have heard of. Really, it's just a channel with lots of subscribers and stuff. And he's offered to kind of pay me a bit of dosh to do the bridge videos for his channel. Still undecided about that. Obviously, I have talked about this in the past, and lots of people said, you know what, if you're going to get offered money for it, then That's fine as long as you link to it on the page so we can see it. I'm still in two minds about it. I mean, I feel like even though lots of people have said it's fine, do it, no worries, I kind of feel like, maybe there are people who aren't speaking up, people who are funding, who are just sort of thinking might be a thing that's a bit dodge. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. I kind of feel like at the same time though, as long as it doesn't actually change the nature of it, as long as the videos that I make for that channel are exactly the same as the ones that I would make for mine, I don't see any fuss. But the only thing is that the whole point about it would be that he would be putting it on his channel with adverts. And I do know that a lot of people who have funded this have not funded this on the basis of allowing me to create stuff that I want to create for you guys. But some people have funded it on the basis of the fact that there's no adverts, and that's the statement that they're making, and that's fine. That's cool. I'm not, I wouldn't have a go at that. Anyway, the problem is that those people probably aren't watching these as much. I assume that maybe the people who are funding this because it's an ad-free thing, and a kind of fuck you to the ad system, maybe aren't the sort of people who are going to watch the weekly update videos. So I kind of feel also that maybe this is a bit of an echo chamber of me telling you these things and having this conversation, that the people who might not like it might not be the people who are going to respond. Or you see what I mean? It's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one, but I'm still thinking about it. Anyway, because of that, I'm going to crack on with this today because I do want to try and make another video today. And so, yes, questions. Oh, yes, and that's the other thing is I've got this backlog of stuff I still want to make. And actually, I'm going to do this, right? As soon as I've got the XCOM stuff out of the way, as soon as XCOM and Dark Souls are out of the way, I'm just going to crack on and have a nice little season of good stuff. I want to make my video about Viva Pinata. Pardon me. Sorry, somebody asked me last week about the glassware, not this glass. It's quite a nice glass. I forgot to ask my girlfriend, so I haven't got an answer. But yeah, I want to make that. I want to make something about Planescape Torment, although it's tricky because it's been done so much has been said about it. I need to work out exactly what that would be. I am going to make the FTL Primer video. At the very least, I'll probably make that tomorrow. I am going to make that. I'm really sorry. I feel bad because the problem is time just slips away from me, and I kind of feel like I need to nail things down. I need to get some stuff out of my way and have a lists and be quite strict with myself. I don't think I'm being lazy. I'm really busy, but it's difficult. It's difficult just being one person. But hey. Questions. Nick Kieli. Oh God, I fucked that up. Sorry, Nick. He's basically talked about last week's Daft Souls where we talked about Baldur's Gate 2, and he wants to know, should he play the first Baldur's Gate or skip it and start with 2? Skip it. Always skip it. The first Baldur's Gate at the time was amazing, but it's very antiquated. It's very difficult to get into. And actually, all you really need to know is told in the prologue for Baldur's Gate 2. So there's not a lot of story in the first Baldur's Gate. I've just realized I'm turning into a ghost again. Good Lord. That's better. And yeah, Baldur's Gate 2 is just amazing. It's amazing. We forgot to mention a bunch of the characters that make that game amazing. But yeah, go straight into 2. Don't fuck about with 1. I mean, 1's not a bad game, but it's 2 is much, much better. Juiced Ziff, the man who has the best name in the world as far as I'm concerned, he basically talks again in Daft Souls. If you haven't listened to it, I think it was episode 7. We did a lot of chat about kind of old school RPGs like Baldur's Gate, Fallout, etc. And we were talking about Fallout, but we never mentioned New Vegas, which, if you ask me, is far superior to Fallout 3. Have you played it? We were actually talking about New Vegas I think before the podcast, when we were just sort of sitting around, which I admit isn't helpful if you wanted to listen to the podcast. However, yes, basically, I like New Vegas a lot, but Quinn's doesn't. There's actually there's a fight to be had there at some point, and maybe we'll have that on a future podcast. I think New Vegas is in some ways superior to Fallout 3, but Quentin very heavily disagrees. It's a tricky one, but I prefer it. I thought that New Vegas had some really strong ideas, whereas Fallout 3, it's a really tough one. Obviously, there were tons of bugs in New Vegas. That's kind of partly an Obsidian thing, but it's also partly just the fact that it was a really buggy engine. I mean, Bethesda are kind of famous for making cheap games in a way. It's kind of, nobody really notices that, but the way they make their games is quite frugal, and that means their engines are a bit wonk. But yeah, I think if New Vegas had been the game that came out first, people would have maybe been more fond about it because of the fact that A lot of things hadn't changed. It was slightly buggier, but it was a lot more ambitious in terms of what it was trying to do in New Vegas. Anyway, we will talk about that at some point because I think New Vegas is great, and Old World Blues is fucking amazing. If you still have a copy of New Vegas around and you haven't played Old World Blues, you need to do that. That's something, again, I might come back to at one point, because the only time I've ever really done anything about Old World Blues was writing a very small review for OXM. Actually, I think I wrote a very small one for the mag. It was like a tiny one, but I wrote a bigger review for the website. So it's worth having a look. I think it's called totalxbox.com now. It's when I used to work at OXM. My review for that, I thought it was excellent. It's worth a read. Matthew Metcalf says, in reference to your creepy voice at the end, do you like rusty spoons? That's obviously a reference to something else that I don't know. So I'm going to say no. I like clean spoons that are not rusty. Stainless steel. Yogurts. I'm going to eat a yogurt after this. I've gone yogurt mental this week. Admittedly, just because I've realised I've got loads of yogurts and they're going out of date. Brett W says, good to see you so chipper again. Thank you. I am chipper. I am. I still feel like I'm not delivering the kind of stuff I want exactly. And that's because my days are slipping away from me, as I keep saying. It's fucking boring. I feel like I'm making excuses for myself. And I kind of know I'm not, because I am working hard and I'm doing a bunch of stuff. But I am also, I mean, the thing is, I guess the problem is I'm kind of working as hard as I was before, but I'm being a bit more strict with myself about my time, you know? And I'm not allowing myself to slip into the kind of really dangerous territory of working like too much. So I am trying to make sure that I do kind of switch off in the evenings and I do switch off on the weekends, which is what I wasn't doing before. I got into a period where for about three years I've been working 7 days a week and working evenings and just never really stopped working. And I'm still bad and I still do that a lot, but I'm trying to kind of rein that in. But it does mean that because of that, and because I've bitten off more than I could chew at first, it means I'm in a zone where I'm not really creating the exact kind of content I want to be creating. And I mean, I think a lot of you guys will be happy with it because you just frankly just want to see me having fun and making stuff. And that's cool. But I do have aspirations beyond that. I don't just want to be making videos of me playing games and having a laugh. I do want to make good videos. You know, I want to make really good stuff. And it's not going to be that different. It's just, you know, like some of the great stuff I made at Video Gamer. I want to get back into the zone where I'm making stuff like that as well. But I will get there. I'm confident. Anyway, his question was, given the way business is going, experiments like my Patreon approach, how do you see this impacting active and reactive games journalism? And he says, by active, I mean actually asking questions of a person and not walking down, and he means by reactive, I mean the semi-indirect process of they release a game, you react in the form of a video, Yeah, okay, that's an interesting question. And I think that's actually one of the main reasons that what I do cannot be the entire future of how games journalism works, and I would never argue that. I mean, a lot of people have kind of gone, "Oh, it's the future." It's like, no, it's a different angle. Okay, like so, I think that what I'm doing works well. If you want to cover things in a way that isn't necessarily massively mainstream, or if you're not too bothered about the first half of things. I mean, like proper journalism of going and actively asking questions. I'm more interested in kind of looking at things in a more wider kind of a social way, you know, kind of making kind of thinking about things, trying to have reaction piece videos where I'm trying to be a bit measured about it and not trying to fall on one side of being hugely reactive or hugely negative, etc., etc. But at the same time, and also just trying to make people laugh and trying to do funny things, but also sometimes a bit of satire, a bit of taking the piss out of the industry. Stuff like that. However, like that kind of going out, asking questions, making people accountable, actually going and interviewing people, that's a different thing entirely. And it's actually really difficult, if not impossible, for me to do that in the current way that I do, because you need access, you know? And to get access, it's two things. I've talked about this in the past, but access requires two things. It requires time and clout. So if I want to go and interview people who make a game, in the run-ups to making a game, then I need to basically, the access I need requires me to have contact with a PR, because often you can't go to developers on their own. You can go to small developers sometimes, but that takes time. So you've got a time element. If you've got to send emails back and forth, you've got to arrange it. And that sort of admin can drown you, honestly. That admin, as a man who used to work in companies where you can easily drown in admin, you can drown. You know, you can become one of those people who just constantly feels like they're horribly busy when actually all you're doing is answering emails. You know, it's a slippery slope. So you've got the admin time, but also you're only going to get access to those people if they feel like it's going to be worthwhile for them. And also, you know, the games industry is not set up for tough questions, you know? When you have an interview and if you go and sit and you give them hardball questions and you really put someone on the spot and make them accountable, there's not a lot of publications that can get away with doing that. I used to actually do that quite a lot when I was at OXM. Not all the time, but I would occasionally get a bit spiky with people, especially on video. I was quite proud of the video interviews I used to do on the OXM report, which used to be on Xbox Live. I used to really kind of, in a kind of jovial way, I used to really kind of be a bit pointy with people and be like, no, answer the question. But you can only get away with that if you're actually quite a big media entity. Otherwise, you're just going to get blacklisted, you know, because it's not the norm. In a lot of other journalistic areas of journalism, like that kind of hardball interview is sort of accepted, but in games, it's very much kind of like, you know, the developers are there to talk about this specific thing about the game, and if you try and actually get information from them, then often they're going to close up, and if you keep pushing, then often the PRs are going to get annoyed, and it's difficult. You have to be in a certain level of a position of privilege to be able to do that and get away with it and continue to be able to then get access in the future. And I don't think I'd be at that level at all anymore. So I might be able to get in, but I think it would be a one-trick thing. I think if it was like I kind of went in and made a big thing and then next time you're not likely to get invited if you are deemed to have caused more trouble than worth, because that's what PR have to do. They have to, it's all about worth for them. They need to be able to show that the time and money they've invested in terms of organizing these events, organizing these interviews, are beneficial for the promotion of the game. That's their job. I get that. I used to do that, you know, not directly. I used to do like international PR, which is more strategy and more like coming up with ideas that you can, it's kind of a bit more thinky and less manipulative. I don't know. Anyway, it's so I don't think what I do can ever really replace that, because as an individual, I just don't have the kind of access that I used to have as a publication. But that's kind of fine, because the kind of medium, the kind of nature of what I've shifted into doesn't require it. But yeah. It's a wider issue really that pointy questions aren't allowed, and a wider issue that it's very difficult to get to talk to these people because yeah, often there's controlled by a PR gate, and it means if it's not going to be a direct benefit to the game that they are promoting right now, often that's a no-no. So if you email a developer saying I want to have an interview about a game that came out 2 years ago, then you have to go through the PR, and the PR is going to go, well, this isn't going to help us promote game C that's coming out this year. So no. So the only way you really get to have those really interesting conversations with developers where you can be actively kind of reaching out and actually asking questions are when you kind of grab somebody at a big thing. Like things like GDC are quite good for that, because you don't have to go through the PR then, but you're not purposefully going around them. You're not circumventing them in a way that you would be if you were trying to get their email and email them directly. If you can just sit down and it's there's an art to it, but it's a different world, you know, and it's a world that maybe I'd like to be involved in at some point, but it's very difficult to do both, you know, because it's a time investment. But I think that there might be some people who would be able to do that. I mean, obviously, I think it feels like what's he called? Rev 3 dude. I always bloody forget his name, and I never forget his face. He's got fantastic chops. Doesn't matter. I do know who he is. There's no point. It's embarrassing. I always forget his name. But anyway, he's one of the good guys. You know who he is. You know who I mean. It'll probably come back to me in a minute. But he seems to have just tapped out of games for now. I can't blame him, because he's one of the good guys, but he's just received so much hate for such a long time. And it's probably just like, you probably have this point where you just go, can I be asked for this? Especially what he's doing, where he is trying to actually make a difference and bang a drum and stuff. But I think he's the sort of guy, Adam Sessler. There you are, Adam Sessler, which means now you don't need to write in the comments. Saved you a second. But yeah, I think if he did something like a Patreon thing, but for what he did, for what he sort of thing he did, then that would be different, and that would probably work. But if you have like more journalisty types, maybe he's not even the right example. Anyway, you get what I mean. Anyway, Richard John Thompson asks, he's got a question actually about the nature of violence in games and and about, does it matter with, I mean, he's basically worried about, like, he says, do you think there's any truth to the whole thing about violent games being used as a scapegoat, especially with the fact that they are getting more realistic and stuff like the Oculus Rift with the kind of VR thing. And it's a really difficult thing, basically. I mean, he talks about how, he says too many people often, who play games, they might be, children who play games might be mentally or emotionally immature and unequipped to deal with the information. This is he's not for the record, he's not basically saying, oh, this is terrible, it should be stopped. He just wants to know what I think about it, which is fair. I think that it's an issue that doesn't change. I think that when the 16-bit games and 8-bit games were violent or whatever, like people then were going, oh, but people will think it's really happening. The graphical fidelity has never mattered because the graphical fidelity we've always had has always seemed frighteningly realistic in the eyes of people who worried about it. But I also think that, people innately know the difference between reality and a game. Even when you're young, you know it's not real. And if you don't, if there's a point where you struggle to have that reality link between what's on the screen, what's happening in the game, and what's real, then that's not because you're a child. That's because you are a bit unhinged, and that's just a thing, And then the problem with that is, what do we do? What's the solution? And there isn't a solution. The only solution is, well, if people are mentally unhinged, then it's wise to keep them away from violent, fantasy-based material. And that's just, no one's going to argue with that, right? But then the issue here isn't that. It isn't that violent media exists. Even though, there are questions to be made about the fact that the most popular things on the planet are just violence related, because we just, as a species, we kind of like that. But that's a bigger thing. I think the main issue is just the fact that we need to basically deal with mental health in a much more sensible way. It's very common for when somebody is clearly dealing with mental health issues to demonize and distance ourselves from them and blame factors. And I'm assuming this question is in relation to the fact that something a lot of people have tweeted at me. The fact that the Daily Mail, I think it was Daily Mail, have indirectly blamed Dark Souls as being maybe one of Dark Souls and heavy metal music as being the cause of somebody who's killed themselves recently, or killed someone. No, they killed the teacher. Oh, sorry. Misremembered. They stabbed their teacher, which is horrible, obviously, really horrible thing. But it's clearly somebody who was not quite right in the head. And anyway, a lot of people have been sending me this link and saying, oh, what do you think about this? And I've been trying to ignore it because I think that even discussing that sort of thing is just exactly what the Daily Mail want, I think the Daily Mail are in particular very, very clever publication, and the fact that they have learned that the best way to get traffic is from angering people. And I think they've worked out quite quickly that angering video game fans is easy traffic, because there's a lot of us and we're on the internet a lot and we get angry and we share stuff. We are like an easy dime. So I don't really engage in that stuff. I just try and ignore it because I think it's not worth any trouble. But I think that the whole reality, I don't think to us, people who've grown up with stuff like Mega Drive and NES games, etc., this whole Oculus thing seems insane because it's such a step. But I think that the same was true from people who grew up with Spectrum games looking at PlayStation games. I think it's not real. I think it's not real. It doesn't matter how real it seems until we are literally plugging something into our brain and actually taking over and actually fucking with our senses directly. It doesn't matter if the screen is 7 feet away from you or 2 centimeters away from you. It's still a screen and it's still speakers. Until you're actually kind of altering consciousness directly and changing the wiring to put in new things, which may happen eventually, it may just be sci-fi, it may happen. That's when we get to the point where it might be fair to start saying, is this, but for now, doesn't make a difference. And I think the only way to actually think about this in terms of violent stuff, the odds of us looking at ourselves as a species and trying to identify why we are so obsessed with fantasy violence, that's like, come on, we're never going to do that, all right? That's just hardwired into our brains. It's pretty fucked up, but that's just the way it is. Something we can address, though, is the way that we deal with mental illness. And I think the problem with this stuff is it just distances it. It's just yet another loner, weirdo kid who was obsessed with violent video games and loud metal music when he wasn't, I've been obsessed with violent video games as well. I'm not a weird guy. Yeah, but the problem is that until we start actually having mature conversations about mental health and dealing with mental health in the media in a way that is intelligent and non-harmful, this stuff's going to keep happening. And I think it's very much a cultural problem. And I think we need to work together to be understanding about it, to help identify it, and to have people who aren't afraid from a young age to just actually talk to their friends and talk to their parents and say, in the same way that if you needed to see a doctor, that's the thing. It's exactly the same. It's like if you were struggling to walk because you've broken your leg. You probably say to your friends around you, guys, I'm really struggling to walk at the moment because I think I've broken my leg. So can you help me? Can we do something about this? When I think at the moment we're still in a stage where if you were a teenager and you turned to your friends and said, guys, I think I'm mentally ill, people would freak out. And I think that's just something that's going to continue to be true for this generation. But all we can try and do is help change the world so that maybe in a generation or two, like in about 10 years, they'll be in a state where they can turn to their friends and say, this is it. In the same way that when I was growing up in school, kind of admitting you were gay was like a really huge thing and not many people did. Whereas now I get the impression, and this may just be distorted by the internet, but I get the impression that generations of kids now are a bit more open about that, a bit more comfortable with that. So I think these changes can occur, but it does take time and it takes work. And it takes work from those of us who aren't involved. I'm not mentally ill. I know lots of people who have experienced it. I feel like I've skirted it myself at one point when I was younger, but for as long as we give these kind of things any oxygen, it's not going to help. We just need to restrict it, and we need to basically look out for each other. That's, to be honest, it's a simple answer to the problem, but largely that is how it works. I've realized I've actually skipped loads of questions from the start. Whoops. I'll continue for now and I'll come back to them. So Joshua asks, what do you think about tabletop games being translated into video games? I don't know. I think the crossover is actually not as big as we think. I think one of the things I love about XCOM is the fact that XCOM is the new one is basically like a board game. It's like a board game, but you don't have to set it up, and it doesn't take forever to set up because it's simple. But the way it works is it's a grid-based system with rules that are quite easily perceived, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but it's very simple. The fact that they've condensed it down from having 120 action points to having like 2 action points, you can 2 actions, and you can get some modifiers. So if this is this, then it's a board game. So yeah, I like it. And especially I think video games have become sometimes too complicated and too enamored with their own complication. Where I still think that actually it's all about elegant design. I think that's why I love board games at the moment, is because board games cannot be excessively complicated if they want to be really good and really compelling. I don't think. The best board games are clever and allow you to play them in really interesting and strategic ways, but also just a very elegant, When I say elegant, I mean like that they've taken a mechanic and they've boiled it down to the simplest way it can be. They haven't left in 6 rules. If you can use 1 rule instead of 6, then that's better. That's elegant design, And you get these very neatly designed, clever little machines, and that's what board games are. And I think that they have to be, because you can't fudge it in the same way. With video games, you can be like, well, this does this, and you can wonky it together because players aren't going to be the ones that have to work it out. They're not going to be the ones that have to do all of the stuff that ties that together. But if you have to actually sit and do it yourself with books and maths and stuff, then you have to be it puts it on you to be a bit more elegant with your design. And I think that's interesting. Not all games do that, obviously. That's why, as with games, not all board games are good. Darren Russell asks, he says, hello, Matt. And he's interested in getting to the JRPG genre. He says the only one he's ever played and enjoyed is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. That's interesting. I never really liked Crisis Core, but that's fine. But that was mainly because I won't get into that here. Anyway, he wants some recommendations. Well, I always recommend Chrono Trigger, just because Chrono Trigger is just a brilliant RPG and remains it. Bravely Default impressed me, but really dragged on towards the end. It sounds like you want ones that are kind of a bit action focused though, right? Because Crisis Core, I think that was, if I remember correctly, that had a cool kind of... Did it? I don't remember. I think it had a kind of real-time slashy, hacky slash ones, and I like them. Kingdom Hearts was very good when it first came out. The Kingdom Hearts games since then have kind of got a bit crap in the fact that the stories have gone properly off the rocker into who gives a shit land. But the first Kingdom Hearts I enjoyed, although it did have lots of very annoying things in it, and it's probably showing its age massively. The World Ends With You is very good. That's a DS game. And that's a sort of side-scrolling, very interesting JRPG, cool combat. What else is good that's in that vein of an RPG with live action? Let me think what else. I'm struggling with that one. There's lots of good ones, but it's a bit of an odd one. It's hard to recommend things as a beginner. without knowing what. Oh, actually, one that was very good and is quite hard to track down now, but you have to download a ROM of it and then download a patch, was Seiken Densetsu 3, which was Secret of Mana 2, which was, you can get a Japanese version and people have like translated it, fan translations. That was really cool. It had a very simple combat system. It was like classic SNES thing, but I don't know, maybe that's very old as well now. The difficulty is that the real heyday of the JRPG was way back when. They've kind of lost their spark a bit, and that's why I'm excited about Bravely Default, really, is because the game itself irritated me at the end a lot, but it does show that, especially now with Square Enix deciding that trying to conquer the Western games market is maybe a bit mad. It looks like they're going to focus on that stuff again. That's really exciting because I think that they've still got it, you know? There's something there. They really need to learn from their mistakes with Bravely Default and be a bit less conservative with their design, but they're onto something. But I don't know. I'm still trying to think about like the action ones. I really got into Disgaea. Disgaea games are amazing, but they're very different. They're very like technical and numbery. But man, if you get addicted to numbers, that shit is crack. It really is. Okay. Geraldo Nascimento. I think that's all right. He says, love your stuff. Any chance of more one-shot videos? Yes, absolutely. As I was saying at the start, he says, I like the ongoing series, but looking forward to one-shot out of the blue stuff. Yes, I really want to get back to that. I mean, I've created a rod for my own back out of a sense of guilt, and that was dumb. But I'm learning. It's a learning process, you know? As a man said to me once after we crashed a canal boat into the side of a wall and we're desperately trying to get it out and angrily it was really funny. We were on a family holiday and we'd really fucking got it stuck. And we were just there going, and this old man walking his dog walked past and just went, it's all experimental. And I thought that was amazing. It's like, yes, it is. It is. It's all experimental. And if you kind of approach life in that way, it's kind of, just, everything's going wrong. Well, it's all an experiment, you know? Sometimes you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. And I've actually kind of fucked up a little bit with this sort of the start of how I'm doing things, but I'll get there. Things will smooth out. Anyway, James Connell, he says, I was wondering what you thought about people like Jeff Gerstmann and the entire Giant Bomb setup, i.e. leaving a major games media site and just deciding to do it their way. And he says, I wonder what you thought about this model in comparison to your Patreon. Have you considered such a thing, a website of your own? And yes. And he also says, can't wait for longer video pieces about stuff like, again, I want to do it myself. Anyway, that's a really interesting question. And actually, to be honest, it's a frustrating one because it's just the nature of the time and nature of the media. Games media as an entity is in a really, really dark place at the moment with cutbacks and trimming and no money to be made in it, really. And not no money for, very little money for the people actually doing it, but that's just standard, but also just no money in terms of the people who used to be making tons of money out of it, which is bad because it's just... the cuts always seem to be hit editorial first, you know? I mean, Future Publishing I used to work for are now currently getting rid of lots of management they don't need, but they should have done it years ago. You know, for a long time, it's just always been the tendency for media companies to keep the editorial staff on a massively short leash and really keeping them on no money, keeping them working too hard because of the fact that they know that people do it because they love it and they know that they can replace people. And it's a really nasty attitude to take. And I think it really undermines the quality of the people who they hire, you know. And I think that that's not true because I think that whilst anyone would like to do their job, not many people can do it very well. But anyway, that's something that I think applies to lots of games media. At the time when Giant Bomb kicked off, I think those guys were really lucky because having worked at GameSpot for a long time, they were actually probably had a decent chunk of money because American games media sites, they always get paid loads more. Like UK games journalists get paid like fucking nothing compared to the US counterparts. And it's why there is always this sort of like slightly bitter from the UK side, because a lot of UK games journalists kind of generally think that the UK writers tend to be better than the US writers. And I kind of think that's true. There are some amazing US writers, but generally speaking, I find US games writing a bit too dry and uninteresting for my liking. But then also it's this annoying thing in the fact that UK guys tend to get paid pennies, whereas the US guys get paid a lot more. Even like in the same companies, it's sort of just, I don't know, it's mad. So those guys were in a great position, right? They left Giant Bomb. They were also on this wave of this massive controversy that had really stirred up a hornet's nest. So I think they were in a strong position. And also the media landscape was far better, you know? That was a time when Jeff Gerstmann and those guys could have probably gone to a few people and probably pitched and probably got some really good sponsorship, some really good funding for their site. Whereas now the arse is falling out of the games media industry so much that the idea of, I mean, I don't know, I would love to start my own game site. I really would. It would be amazing. And I know the sort of people I want to do it with. You know, I would want to do it basically with a lot of people from Dark Souls. You know, I want to start a games website with people like Quentin Smith, you know, Gavin Murphy, Steve Hoggy. Like, it's stuff from me, from Kez, and like all these people that they are the best people in my mind. They are the creme de la dog's bollocks of the UK games industry. I'd love to do that, but there's just no funding. I mean, there's no way you could do it because, I mean, I'm hugely thankful that I'm able to sustain what I'm doing, like using this Patreon platform. But I mean, the amount of cash you need to sustain a larger operation of more people, even if you are just all working at home like I am, it's a lot of cash. And there's not a lot of ways to make money at the moment. You know, advertising is just getting really, really horrible and really tough. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just always been very jealous about people like Jeff Gerstmann because it's like he managed to, he was probably already earning like tons more than I'll ever earn when he was at GameSpot. He got to leave off the basis of somebody else just being a fucking prick. Like, it wasn't exactly like he was a hero. It was just that the other people above him were acting like massive tools. He had an open goal created for him. He had some cash in his pocket and he stumbled out into a media landscape where there was still funding available, or where like you'd probably be able to get a loan from banks, being like, well, what do you want the loan for? Well, I'm going to start a video games website. Whereas now, I think if you tried to do that, you probably get laughed out of the bank. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of frustrating because I kind of feel like, you know, they got dealt a very good hand, let's just say. And whilst I do like some of the Giant Bomb stuff, I sort of think, you know, he got dealt a good hand. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I'd love to do that on my own website one day. I just don't see how it would be possible, you know? It's really difficult because, I mean, it's great being able to get people involved for Dark Souls, but, you know, people are working in the day. You know, I'd love to do more collaboration stuff, but most people I know are working in the day. It means they can't just come around and make videos with me because they have jobs. We're all grown-ups, you know? And I'm past that stage in my life where I have all of my friends being kind of students or semi-employed people who you can just have fun with. So the only way for me to do that is to be able to sustainably actually pull people out of stuff and to have people going, you know what, quit your job. I'm going to hire you to work a day or two a week with me. And I'm not there, you know. Having said that, I might be there at some point, you know. I might get to a point with a Patreon page where I'm actually getting enough money and where I'm going to go, you know what, I'm going to spend some of that money to hire this person. But that's a tricky one, another conversation for another time. And even then, it wouldn't be like launching a brand new big site. I'm fucking jealous. I mean, Polygon. Oh, I'm so fucking jealous of Polygon. You know, they got written the fattest check in the world largely from Microsoft, and they got to just start their own website. And I appreciate the passion of it. You know, they were like, we're going to make the best games website in the world. But I don't think they have. You know, I think they've made something that looks fucking amazing, has incredible tech, and it has lots of dry writing, has some great guest pieces. They're starting to get better now. But I mean, their video is the most highly produced crap I've ever seen. I mean, it's not all crap, but it's like they clearly spend a ton of money filming and editing it, and it just comes out being very dull. And it's just one of those things where it's like, man, in an alternative reality, like, I would love to be the person who got handed that check. Like, oh man, if some massive company said to me, oh Matt, we're going to give you $1 million to launch a website, I would make the best fucking website you've ever seen in your life. So yeah, I'm still, despite the fact that I'm happy in a good spot, I still have a massively deep resentment of those lucky fucks. But I think everyone in the industry does, to be honest. You know, so they got handed an incredible golden goose. But yeah, we'll see how long it keeps going for, I guess, because I don't know how they're making money. Anyway, Peter Milner talks about, he says, back in the PS2 days, I used to really enjoy reading monthly magazines. Oh, this is an easy one. He basically says it feels like magazines are dwindling and dying off as people are finding it harder to justify their costs. Yeah, no, magazines are fucked. That's it. What's your opinion on this? Do you think magazines should see a return of success they had back in the era? No, magazines are dead. Magazines are dead. And they're dead for a whole bunch of reasons. It's a really complicated thing, actually. They're mainly dead because of the fact that they become so reliant on just... Magazines back in the day were selling millions of copies. They were making tons of money just from selling them. And then they got greedy and they started filling them with adverts. And then they were making stupid money, selling millions of copies and getting the advert money. Then the sales numbers slipped down massively. But then it became like, well, they weren't making money from selling them anymore. So they were just making money from the adverts. And then now you pick up a magazine, you pick up a big glossy magazine. They're fat, but they're full of adverts. Who gives a fuck? And also because of the fact that the editorial teams are so stretched down to minimal skeleton crews, it means that they use the same templates every month. There's very little exciting about them. You don't open it, you're not surprised by them. It's very routine. The writers have to write far too much copy every month, and it means that they're not really excited by it. It's just a job. The passion has been sucked out of magazines. And the problem is as well is, you can still have great things being made by small teams, but they don't give a fuck about it. If somebody said to me, if I was going to start my own magazine, I might do something exciting with it. But if you have to start a magazine and fill it with, and it's full of adverts, you feel like, I don't want to pour my heart into this. It's bollocks. Lots of people are trying to bring back magazines as either PDF subscriptions or just small runs, because there is something nice about the physical nature of magazines, something beautiful, but it's very difficult. If you want high quality copy, you've got to pay good rates for the best freelancers. If you want good design, you have to pay good rates for good designers. And it's very much more of a passion project, I think. Well, something I try and do with Shut Up and Sit Down, the board game website, is for the Gold Club bags, as part of the subscription we do for that, because it's quite a lot more as a monthly subscription than what I'm doing. We give out these quarterly little bags where everyone gets things. And that's fun because I basically make it's not a magazine, but it's the spirit of a magazine, these little bespoke paper things that they get and they can read and have jokes and little things. And it's always a bit different each time. And that's cool. So I think the spirit of the magazine will return. And what I'm trying to do is trying to preserve the spirit of the magazine with this Patreon thing. Because I remember when my favorite magazines were closing, I would have bought any number of copies of that magazine. I would have bought 20 copies if I could, if that meant that magazine would continue. Because actually, it wasn't me spending £5 a month. A lot of the time, it wasn't me spending £5 a month because I wanted to read the magazine. It was because I wanted to support the magazine. I wanted it to continue existing. And so many of my favorite magazines died. And it was just heartbreaking when it's this is our final issue. You're like, no! It was always so sad. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to do now is the same thing. It's just the difference is that the people who are funding it, everybody gets it, It's not like a subscription whereby only the people who are paying for my videos get to see them. It just means that you're paying for them to exist, which is why I always bought magazines. But yeah, it's a shame. Magazines are just fucked. Magazines are just completely fucked. It's too expensive. It's very difficult. The whole process is insane. And it's really not good for the environment either, to be honest. But I don't think physical things will ever die out. I just think magazines in their current form are fucked. But yeah. Well, I don't think it. I know it. It's the whole thing is just going down the pan faster than anyone wants to admit. Paul Cosgrove says, I've mentioned playing Dungeons and Dragons in past videos. What editions have I played? I've played a bunch of stuff, but I was so much younger. I used to love Cyberpunk back in the day, Cyberpunk 2020. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I never really got on with the rule set that much. I used to like the World of Darkness stuff, so I played a bit of Werewolf, had fun with that, played some Vampire, had fun with that. Never really got far with the campaigns, which is annoying, because we always had these ideas of going through vast amounts of time as a vampire and living through centuries, and thought that'd be cool, but nah. I think at the moment I might be playing some of the new Star Wars RPG soon with the Shut Up and Sit Down guys, with Quinns and Paul and that, because they want to check it out. Apparently it's really good. I don't know. I've heard some interesting things. I do kind of want to get back into a bit of pen and paper. But again, very time consuming. And Moshtin asks, what's my opinion on conventions like GemuCon and Rezzed? I don't know. I don't really go to them, to be honest. I went to Eurogamer this year because we were doing some shut up, sit down stuff there. And actually, it was just an awesome chance to meet people who like my stuff. GemuCon, I've never been to. I'm not sure how I feel about it because it seems to be very much kind of like meet your favorite YouTubers and stuff. And I think that some of the YouTubers who go there because they just want to meet their fans. But I think that I get the impression that some of the people going there are either paid to be there or are charging for like autographs and stuff, and I just find that whole thing a bit weird and dirty. I think that's really, so I don't know. It's one of those things where I haven't been there, so I don't know, but I wouldn't really want to be a part of that. I think if I was going to be meeting people, I want it to be just quite genuine, and I wouldn't, even if what I was doing was genuine and turning up and being like, hey guys, I'm not sure I'd want to be doing it in the same place where people were physically like taking people's money or something to sign something or take a photo with them. I think that's cheap. Especially if you can offer something else, I don't know. But Res is apparently very good. I've heard it's very busy, which is why I haven't. Well, actually, I was too busy going this year. I really struggle with these things. I've got to be honest, because I'm not claustrophobic, but I am socially claustrophobic. You could put me in a box, I'd be fine. Honestly, I'm quite good with contained spaces. I just relax. I just go, okay, just going to relax. It's fine. I'll get out eventually, I'm sure. But places where I'm packed in with people, I really freak out. I'm not very good at London Underground in peak hours, which is why I don't tend to go on it at peak hours. I try to avoid commuting in the mornings when I can. And I'm really bad at conventions. I just get really like, and I don't go shopping in London on the weekend. To be honest, London's not a good city for me. I've got to be honest. I only live here because my girlfriend lives here, really. I think she's really locked here. She can't move away because of what she does. I think otherwise I probably would, in a way. I'd miss lots of friends and stuff, but I think that it's not really, I don't know how much longer I'll stay in London life-wise, just because I don't really have a huge amount of love for it. It's a cool city, but yeah, too many people for me. And I find that cons freak me out as well. But yeah, okay. I am going to have to wrap up soon, I think, because I'm getting knackered. I haven't answered all the questions. I was really hoping to answer all the questions this week, so I wouldn't have to keep having too many. Let's try and find one more good question. Here's an easy question. Andrew Brooker asks, what are my thoughts on Murdered Soul Suspect? Don't have any thoughts on Murdered Soul Suspect. I've seen videos of it. It's got a bloke with a fedora on it. I've no idea. No idea. It might be shit, might be great. I literally know nothing about it. I'm not particularly interested in it. I don't really like the art style. I don't really like the art direction. It might be really good though. If it is, I'll check it out. And Rich Woodward's got an interesting question now. I'll finish on this one. He says, we feel nostalgic about what we played as a kid with the N64, the SNES, whatever. He says, these consoles/games have a special quality to them. He says, do you think in 15 years, those who are young now, or even us, will look back on the 360, PS3 and the Wii in the same way as fondly? And why is that so hard to imagine? He says, P.S. where the heck is Snorlax? That's a good question. He's in the other room. Sorry. He's fine. Don't worry. He's fine. I don't know. It's impossible to answer that in a way because it is that kind of that zone of what you were doing when you were that age. For me, it was very much like the era of playing JRPGs on the SNES emulator. Shh, don't tell the police. And most of the games didn't come out over here. I couldn't afford a SNES. I was like, it's fine. I'll buy them all now. Put them on PC. I'll buy them all. It'll be fine. And like Ocarina of Time and stuff. I love that shit. Partly, I think there were less games back then, less good games, which means that the shared nostalgia is maybe a bit more condensed. And the fact that we all tended to play the same games, we all have, when you go back to nostalgia, everybody has memories of those games because everyone played the same games. Well, now it's become much more diverse, you know? You can play a whole bunch of different games and a whole different types of games. And even within a genre, you have real specialization. And lots of these games are great, you know? They're really good. So I think that's going to change in the fact that it's you're going to have maybe less just generic gamers who can sit and go, oh, I remember Chrono Trigger, and everyone go, yeah. Because there will be lots of games that people didn't play. But then again, you've got stuff like the first Modern Warfare, you know, Wii Sports. There are still going to be games that everybody played and everyone remembered. Who knows? I think maybe, you know, a lot of our generation maybe turn our nose up about stuff like Call of Duty. But I think for a lot of people, when they get to be mid-20s, they'll have really fond memories of the time they spent playing it online with their friends, which is fine. I have really fond memories of playing some quite shit games. Like I played tons of Turok Wars, which was a spin-off of Turok 2, which was specifically multiplayer only, and you needed the little RAM expansion pack for the N64 to play it. It was pretty crap, but I loved it. I played a lot of that. And that was more the fact that I just had a lot of fun playing that with friends as a child. So, you know, that's legit. That's still legit. But it's hard for me to imagine it. I don't know. I mean, this whole last generation has been a blur of games. I've played so many games, and yet very few have really kind of solidified themselves in my memory as being truly like memorable forever. But that's maybe just, you know, that's life. You know, when we were younger, I didn't have as much money, so I had to play fewer games. So I became very attached to the games I had to play. I love James Pond 2 Robocod. That wasn't a terribly good game, but I fucking loved it. I preferred it to the first Sonic game. Fight me. But that was maybe because it was a big, expansive game, and I only had 2 games. I had Sonic 1, which I completed and then was like, oh, I'm done with this, and that, and which was massive and kept me going for far longer. So I think the way that we play games now is different. Not like overall, just for my age group. Obviously, I've worked in the games industry for about 7 years. And throughout most of that, I've had far easier access to a high quantity of games. Sometimes because the clients I was working for, I get free games for the games I worked on, or sometimes I'd get games because I was a journalist or because I was reviewing them. Even as an amateur reviewer, I was getting free games, you know? And even it's the fact that when you're an adult, you have the disposable income. I spent far too much of my student loan just buying games and buying games consoles and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that will ever change. It's just maybe that in future generations, you're not going to be able to sit and have the same joint I've played this, you remember that, because already with last generation, like there's so many games that people talk about and I'm just like, I haven't played it yet. And when I say played it yet, I'm never going to play it. I'm never going to play Assassin's Creed 3. I've come to terms with that. I like the idea that I might play Assassin's Creed 4, but there's a good chance I'll never play that either. Even though I own it. I don't see when it's going to happen. When's it going to happen? Probably never. So it's really hard to make a judgment on that, especially as somebody who works in the games industry. But I do wonder if maybe it will be that nostalgia will be a bit more diverse, and but that's fine because the world's becoming more diverse and also interconnected by the internet. So it just means that the way people get nostalgic might be more in online groups than necessarily the people around them, but then maybe not because people have played stuff with their friends. Too long, didn't read. I don't fucking know, but it's an interesting question and it's interesting to talk about these things. Anyway, that's it for this week's update. I'm bloody knackered. I like doing these, but God, they are actually really exhausting. So I hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm going to now try and make a video about Tomodachi Life if I'm not too bloody knackered. I've got some lunch first. Lunch. Right. I'll see you next time. Bye!